Hey, everybody. My name is Rob Taylor. I'm a student in the agroforestry program here at the University of Missouri. I'm also the owner manager of a small farm in Ashland, Oregon called Buckhorn Valley Farm, where we do regenerative grazing, primarily of sheep and lamb. So I decided to blend these two things in my life, my academic and my professional pursuits, and give you this case study presentation on grazing management and soil water infiltration. Now, this matters to me for a number of reasons. Um, that is, the way that grazing affects our soils, our waters, is huge because the amount of area being used for grazing is huge. And the amount of people that meet their needs, their basic needs through food, fiber, and other materials is found through grazing, through animals on the landscape. And if how we do that can affect 25% of our watersheds, of our soils, then it matters how we do it. And it matters to me because my pursuits here in this little life are to figure out how we can live in relationship with the things that sustain us in a way that is reciprocal, in a way that is sustainable, not only for ourselves, but for the non human beings on this planet as well. And a lot of that comes in when we think about the soil. And this is a little chunk of soil from my neighbor's property in a little eroded gully. Not a lot we're working with here, but we got grass and we got soil organic matter, and that matters quite a bit for our productivity and for the hydrologic function of our little piece of land. So we know a lot of the mechanisms that affect infiltration already, as we learned in this class: bulk density, pore space, the effect of vegetation, and the effect of soil texture on the hydrological processes of a landscape. We already have a good sense of, and I like to break it down. We all know the details, the heady details of this, which is excellent. But I like this quote that I got out of a paper I was reading to prepare for this presentation. And that is, soil is similar in construction to a piece of bread. We all love bread. It is mostly a series of holes, pores, joined by a matrix of mineral soil and organic matter. The holes are squeezed together as soil is compressed by gravity, animal foot pressure, or equipment wheels on tracks. So this was in a discussion about compaction, and the author was saying that compaction is a normal process. Gravity creates compaction. Even tree roots can compress the soil as it grows outwards. Animal hooves will compress, and it's really about the intensity of this compaction. For instance, equipment wheels and the tracks of, let's say, trucks may leave a much more intense and deep compaction that you can see the effects of if you've ever seen the tire tracks in a field and seen the different plants growing there, often more hardy opportunists. Then you'll see what you're seeing is a change in the soil, in the makeup of the soil, and it's often compaction, loss of pore space that changes the vegetation communities in those areas. And grazing influences infiltration in huge ways. It affects those four variables that were in the previous slide. It affects them through their hoof action, through the trampling that can compact pore space. Usually it's macropores that are compressed rather than micropores, which have some more resilience. Animals also graze. They remove vegetation. That's their job. That's one of their main jobs, let's say. And vegetation removal can lead to less cover, which can lead to a reduced infiltration and increased sedimentation. And if things are overgrazed and bare soil is allowed to receive rain, for instance, that can actually lead to a capping on the soil surface, creating a hydrophobic response to that soil, preventing infiltration. Of which hoof action can sometimes can break up capping, almost like a micro tillage. The animals, what else do? They drop their fertility and they leave their deposits. Manure and urine can lead to increased organic matter and proliferation of soil life. And soil life has an effect on soil health for a number of reasons. One is the creation of pore spaces as soil life moves down through the soil, whether or not it's an earthworm or smaller forms of life. They can help improve the tilth of a soil. And the effects of these actions, they can look very different depending on the management, which is why I like to say it's not the cow, it's the how, which is kind of a funny thing to say, and because we're not just talking about cows here, like this cute cow that is eating sorghum Sudan grass in a farm that I used to work on in Central California called Apricot Lane Farm. But it's not just about the cows. It's how we produce anything, whether or not it's an annual grain or livestock or a perennial crop. There's so many ways to do this. It's not that one is necessarily better than the other, in my view. It's all about how we do it and how we define favorable or unfavorable outcomes of producing these things requires us to look at various metrics. One I'm focusing on here is soil infiltration. So we were talking about managing these livestock to create different outcomes. So what are we managing actually? We're managing mostly these four variables that I have in the upper left: stocking rate, stocking density, grazing period, and rest period. Now, I'll try to break these down quickly for you. Stocking rate is just the amount of animals in an area over a year. It's like an overall metric, like how many cows are you producing? 150 head, whatever it is. That's broken down into a unit called an animal unit, and that's used for people to talk about stocking rate. Now, stocking density is how many animals are in a small given paddock or any sized given area at any one time. So if you have multiple pastures that you're moving your animals through, the density is how many animals are in that one paddock at any given moment. A grazing period is how long the animals are in a place. How much time do they have in that paddock or pasture? And the rest period is how long aren't they in there? How long does that pasture have without animal impact at all in order to recover? And different systems are just playing with these different
Oh, you guys are
variables.
happy, huh?
Now, two main.
Oh, what's going
I
on
have a
over
little video
here?
here.
Oh, buddy. Oh, you're just looking at these guys saying, like, why do they get to eat all that when all I have is this? Well, I'm
So this
sorry,
is my
Mr.
a
314.
fence line where
It's your ears
cows that
cleaning.
I'm not managing
I
are
wish you
next to
did have
sheep that I
this.
am
If you
managing,
were my
and my
cow,
sheep were just
you'd
introduced
have
to that
this.
paddock that
Why
day,
do
and
they
you can
have
see
this and
the
you
the
have
grasses
that?
there are
Well, the answer
much
is
thicker. I can't rewind it
can't
on
see
there.
it quite from
And
here,
they're
but I'll
because
tell
I'm
you that
using
the
rotational
electric fencing,
grazing, and in this paddock with the cow, they're
and grazing
continuously
moves,
grazing
buddy.
this
We
area.
have
They're
fresh
able to
grass
be
every day
in that
rather than
spot
chomping on
for the
nubs.
entire season, for many many
Oh, you
months.
guys are
And
happy,
they're
huh?
basically eating it down to fairway,
Oh,
choosing their
what's going
favorite
on over
stuff,
here?
coming back, eating it down to fairway. When
Oh,
I'm letting my
buddy.
animals come in, eat it
Oh,
down
you're
about
just
halfway, and
looking
then
at
I
these
move them.
guys saying, like,
So that's a
why do
basic
they get
difference
to eat
between
all
continuous
that
versus
when
rotational.
all I have is
Continuous you can think about
this?
as conventional. It's often
Well,
what you see in the West
I'm
here when on
sorry,
a rangeland where they
Mr.
put the cows in, they leave
314.
them for the 9 month
It's your
season or
tank.
whatever it is, and you round
I
them
wish you
back
did
up.
have this. If you were
And
my cow,
rotational is when
you'd
they
have this.
they have
Why do
multiple
they have
paddocks,
this
multiple
and
areas that
you
they go to, and they're
that?
controlling the
Well, the
rest
answer
periods.
is
And there's different forms
can't
of
see
that
it
which we
quite
don't
from
need to get
here,
into,
but
but
I'll tell you
there's
that the electric
basically
fencing,
we're talking about specifically
electric
here
fencing and
short
daily
period
move.
rotational grazing, or you could just say regenerative grazing. And the research shows pretty much across the board that rotational grazing uh, is often leads to improved infiltration rates. And that's for a number of reasons. And it's not always obvious what those reasons are at first. This first study shows that it's actually ground cover that drives the reduction in sediment and implicitly higher infiltration rates in their time controlled grazing study. Others show that rather than the intense livestock activity, it's I didn't have the. Oh yeah. Oh, it's there. It shows that rest is actually the thing that's going to affect the hydrologic stability of an area. It's not the livestock themselves and their hoof action, but it's the removal of them. Which, if you have more paddocks, if you rotate within more paddocks, you can have more areas rested for longer. Um, it shows here again that continuously grazed pasture had greater sediment loss than rotation. Infiltration rate and sediment production were significantly influenced by plant biomass. So again, if you have an area that's resting longer, those plants the grasses, whatever it's in there, has time to recover fully, and you have more thick vegetation for a longer period before grazing happens. And there's also other studies, other questions to ask here, which are then how do these different grazing management techniques how do they affect vegetation cover? So I'm running out of time here, and these studies, basically the takeaways of these studies are that rest leads to vegetation, leads to soil structure, leads to infiltration. Rest is a key factor here, potentially one of the biggest because it affects those other metrics. So just to end here, grazing influences the hydrologic function globally because of its huge land mass usage. Rest period is the strongest driver of infiltration. Moderate short duration grazing outperforms both heavy grazing and total rest. And it's good to always remember it's the management, not the animals, that determines the ecological outcome. So I hope you got something from this. I went to 11 minutes here. Hope that's all right. But have a great day, y'all, and I will catch you in class. All right.